Good evening. Tonight I'm going to talk about relationships. And not just any relationship, ones that we have with many individuals throughout our lives. We probably have some going right now. Those individuals might be rather furry or fuzzy. They might have some feathers. They might be scaly, and they might even be a little bit slimy. Of course, I'm talking about our relationships that we have with animals, our beloved pets. This is otherwise known as the human-animal bond, and it's incredibly powerful, as any of you who have had beloved pets or have them with you now can attest. It represents a kinship, a relationship, a deep connection that's developed over time. Many of us feel as if our animals are members of our family. Their illnesses or their death is just like losing someone that's close to us who's a human. Today, more than ever, though, it does seem like we're seeing more of these animals in the public space. They come to us with coffee shops, to brew pubs, to libraries, to parks, and that can be all well and good, but I'm going to ask us tonight to think a little bit about what that means. Not necessarily so much about what it means to us, but what it means to the animals. Are they enjoying what they're doing? Are they comfortable? Do you know if they're comfortable? When we think about the human-animal bond, we need to think more than what it means to us as humans. We're really pretty good at thinking about ourselves. We need and we owe it to those beloved pets to think about how they're feeling as well. So I'm going to ask you to think about this historically, empirically, and ethically. The human-animal bond, historically speaking, is anything but new, right? As long as we've been here, they've been here. Probably before us, they were here. And they've been critical to our survival in some pretty important ways. They've been a source of food. They've provided warmth and protection. They've even been our partners in herding and hunting efforts. And arguably, they've been really close to us too, regardless of those survival partnerships. The earliest known records that we have from various parts of the world show that the human-animal bond, as early as we can identify it, is really similar to the ones that we have today. We love them, they love us. There's actually research to show that they can love us. And so that has existed for the millennia. Dogs of all species, and this is not to knock on cat people or snake people or fish people or anything like that. They're all wonderful. But dogs, more than any other species, seems to figure prominently in this relationship. And that's probably because somewhere about 15,000 years ago, they became the first domesticated animal. Now, that's not to say that other animals haven't figured prominently in our relationships, of course. Again, not slamming on cat people out there. I've been one myself. And we actually have some more recent evidence of the way that other species have provided comfort to us and support for us and even enhanced our overall health via the human-animal bond. Take, for example, 17th century Enlightenment. It was a period of time when adolescence and childhood was increasingly being recognized as an important and critical part of human development. Pet keeping also rose in popularity during this time. The belief was children could learn a lot for caring for and taking responsibility for pets. They could learn responsibility, empathy, and some self-control, and some compassion. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, birds and other small animals were routinely used in asylums and mental institutions across the United States and England. And in the late 1800s, someone by the name of Florence Nightingale, who you probably identify as the founder of modern nursing, did a lot to document the benefits of animals on our healing process. So you might have thought of Florence Nightingale more as the woman who worked day and night, tirelessly looking after injured soldiers during wartime and carrying her lantern. But before that work, she was still a dedicated nurse, and she nursed the little baby owl. She was at the Parthenon in Athens, Greece, and she saw a group of kids who had accosted a baby owlet that had fallen out of the nest and were kind of hurting it and roughing it up a little bit. She rushed over to the owl's rescue, nursed the owl back to health, ended up keeping the owl as a pet for about 5 years, named the owl Athena, and Athena ended up adapting back to Nightingale's attentions by developing little tricks. So she would bow and curtsy and dance on her little owl feet, and she would accompany Nightingale on her rounds. And the owl would come out and entertain patients and kind of lighten the spirits, the load of healing. This really struck Nightingale as important, and it influenced many of her writings. Throughout the 1900s, early 1900s, the use of animals therapeutically for health and well-being was mostly relegated in the field of psychology and psychoanalysis. And in the 1960s, a well-known child psychologist by the name of Dr. Boris Levinson coined the term animal-assisted therapy. And he did this based on his impressions of watching his dog, Jingles, interact with his child patients. Jingles had a way of breaking down barriers, pulling kids out of their withdrawal state, and just making them feel more comfortable with the therapeutic endeavor. Since that time, research has expanded to show a lot of the benefits that we now understand through the human-animal bond on health and well-being. This started with a foundational study in the early 80s on the life-prolonging effects of pet ownership for heart attack sufferers. Future studies documented that a contact with therapeutic animals can shorten hospital stays and improve patients' feelings of well-being. Just 20 minutes of interaction with a therapy animal can actually lower your blood pressure, lower amounts of the stress hormone cortisol, and even produce an endorphin release, so sort of an emotional or a psychological high. And we also have documented that interaction with a therapy animal can increase the feel-good hormones like serotonin and oxytocin. In the area of coordination and development, especially in the fields of physical and occupational therapy, interaction with a therapy animal can be really helpful in developing gross and fine motor skills. You can imagine the petting and the grooming of an animal can help exercise one's tired joints and muscles and increase one's range of movement without having to think so much about doing it. Because when you pet an animal, you're focused on them and not necessarily what you're doing for yourself. There are a lot of social benefits to therapy animals as well. One of them is the sense of feeling less isolated, less alone by having a fuzzy animal or a feathered animal there to kind of keep you company. They also can be a really important source of non-judgmental support, especially for young, struggling readers. To read to a dog in a school or a library can be really helpful. They're not going to laugh at you. If you have a secret to tell, they're not going to share it. They're very safe. And an area that I've noticed quite a bit is in helping people kind of reclaim themselves. So I work a lot with children who have been traumatized, often through interpersonal victimization. Somebody has hurt them. And when that happens, your sense of safety is eroded. You feel as if maybe the world isn't very safe, other people aren't really safe. And having a therapy animal that will respect your boundaries, but be comfortable with what you want to do with them and just hug on you and be okay if you need to lay on them, can be really empowering when your agency has been diminished. However, as the popularity of helping animals increases, it's important for the field to professionalize and standardize its terminology, and that's what the screen behind me shows. So what I've been calling animal-assisted therapy is actually one of 3 main pillars under a large umbrella term called animal-assisted interventions. The other 2 realms under this umbrella are animal-assisted activities and animal-assisted education. They really are an effort to clarify what animals are doing for whom and under what direction. They're all distinct in their intentionality and goals and objectives, but they're still similar in that they're all predicated on the benefits of the human-animal bond for our health and wellness. So based on that, there is somebody here who would like to meet you tonight. He has been involved with many animal-assisted interventions. Please welcome my working partner, Sunny the therapy dog. Thank you, Erica. So yes, he's a sweetie. So this is Sunny. He is a 2.5-year-old golden retriever. He has been with me since he was just 8 weeks old. He is my pet. He's my family pet. He's my only son. I have 2 daughters. He's my 3rd kid. And he and I have endeavored to try to bring his comfort, his demeanor to the community. We work mostly with children, but we are starting to work with a lot of adults in different settings as well. We are registered through Pet Partners, which is a national and even internationally recognized therapy organization. And if you're entertaining the notion of a therapy animal or want to know more about it, that's a really good place to start. One of those large or even regional-based groups, because they do training, preparation, they'll evaluate, and they even offer liability insurance to their team. So it's an important endeavor in kind of credentialing yourself and creating a legitimacy to your work. So our work has involved hundreds of hours of preparation, training, establishing a good bond, and just making sure that we are available in a good way as much as we can. And you might see there's some little trinkets on his vest here. Those are things that have been provided to him by little friends in the community. So he wears his little tokens from his friends with pride. And so when I said there's still a lot of work, always a lot of work, it's really that it's a lot more work for me than him. A lot more preparation. It's entirely different than just taking your animal around with you. As you can see, he's pretty good. He is always really good. So it's really on my part as the handler to make sure that he's safe, comfortable. He knows this is an okay place to be. He's used to this mat. He's been hanging out here all week long. And that allows him to do his best job. And part of the reason that he's so good at his job is that he has his mom on a tight rein and knows I have treats. He has what we call an affiliative personality, and that's one where the dog exhibits a lot of comfort, seems very confident in themselves, is not put off by being in strange places, and seems really excited to meet people. So he especially likes kids. He's always wanting to go meet kids, but he just enjoys meeting people, and I can tell that because I've been trained to understand what he's telling me. In other words, I've learned to speak dog. And so while it's been a lot of work, we've really enjoyed ourselves. And I would say it's been totally worth, and we look forward to what our future holds. We've only been a registered team for about 13 months, and he's still a really young dog. He won't reach his prime till he's about 4 or 5 years old. So we have hopefully a really great career ahead of ourselves. We've been to schools and universities. We've been to after-school programs and library reading programs. We've been to counseling centers and shelters. We've worked in support groups for people who have been traumatized. We've been to nursing care facilities. We've marched in a couple parades. We've participated in meets and greets at farmers markets and festivals, and the list goes on. What we're going into now, in addition to all those other activities, is first responder incident debriefing. So when law enforcement or EMTs go on a scene and they see something that's pretty emotional and difficult, there's a protocol for helping them sort that out, and we are becoming prepared to be part of that debriefing effort. So we go where we are needed, we go where we are wanted. In a sometimes dark world, this guy makes things a little bit more sunny. He knows it. So what I also would like to do, though, is differentiate what he is from the other animals that you might see out in public spaces. There's a lot of animals that wear bibs and have tags and demarcations, and it's really important that we know what they're doing and what they're not doing. So of the utmost importance out there are the assistance or service animals. Those are the very highly trained animals, most of whom are dogs because of their trainability and their ability to navigate public spaces, that are trained from the very first day that they're born. They are trained for thousands of hours, and many of these dogs cost upwards of $20,000 to $25,000 to acquire. That is the level of training that they have. They are the only animals that are protected by law, by the American with Disabilities Act. They are the animals that have bibs that say, "Don't pet me, I'm working," because they are. Their pets may be second. The human-animal bond might exist, probably does, but they are a life-saving service to the person that they're assigned to, and that is their role. And those animals always need to have the utmost respect. Animals like Sunny also mostly dogs, but can be multiple species, do have a lot of training, and sometimes they do some fun tricks, but they're not life-saving tricks. At least they're not trained to be that way. And they are pets first and working dogs second. So if Sonny would decide that he doesn't want to do this anymore, that is okay. He will always be my family member. He'll always be my pet, my family's pet. The other category here that I think is the one that is causing most confusion these days are emotional support animals, or ESAs. These animals may also have a bib on them. It might say don't pet, it might say service dog, but they're not technically service dogs. What they are is a pet of any species, could be a fish, that the owner really, really loves and feels like it provides a calming influence for them. And so they achieve a doctor's note and submit that in order to bring their pet where their pet would normally not be allowed, such as aircraft or housing that would not allow pets. So what's important here is that these are not the same. They are not protected by the ADA, and these animals don't necessarily have any special training, so we don't ever really know what they might do. And that leads me to my last set of comments. As we continue to think about the human-animal bond, and we think about bringing animals into our lives and in public spaces, which can be a really wonderful thing, we also have to be really respectful about what that involves. There's so much attention about the human-animal bond, about what it means for us, but what does it mean for our animals? The human-animal bond is built on trust, and that trust also makes it really vulnerable to abuse. Animals, especially those that love us, are tuned into us. They can read us better than we think we can read them. And they will do their best to please us, regardless of what we're asking them to do. But compliance is not the same as enjoyment. It's unfair and unethical to place animals in positions for which they're not trained and equipped. And if someone is not trained to understand what the animal is telling them, they really need to take the time to do that before they put an animal in a potentially compromising or dangerous or aggressive situation. It's important that we clean up the ambiguity, we focus on unique understandings of what our beloved animals are telling us, and ensure that both animal and human end of the human-animal bond is honored in the way that it's meant to be. Thank you.